Okay, Chodesh Tov. So we have just entered the month of Adar, and as we know, some of us can't forget, those of us that have children, they say Misha, 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 Misha. So we know that the saying for Adar is Misha nechnas Adar marbim b'simcha. So when we enter the month of Adar, we increase in joy. So I want to just take a look at that for a moment, because if that is a statement of fact, Ruthie's going to love this. Nobody told my glidometer that, because when we came into Adar, right, by the turn of the moon, right, we don't all of a sudden feel like we're full of joy. So that leads me to think that it's not a proclamation. So the next thing is perhaps it's an exhortation that we enter the month of Adar, and that we're told that we should increase in joy. So if that's true, the question is why? What is it about this month in particular, as opposed to the other months, that we should increase in joy? So you might want to say, well, you take a look at Purim is in Adar, and we were slated for annihilation, and God miraculously saved us, and so that's cause for joy. We all want to exist, and so we were going to be perpetuated, and we're going to exist. So we'd say, okay, we're saved from destruction. So that's a cause for happiness. But if you stop to think for a minute, you can say, well, but what about Nisan, right? We have Pesach, and we have God redeemed us from Egypt. He saved us from the hand of Paro. He saved us from being destroyed there, and we're not told in Nisan to be happy. Or let's take Kislev. We have in it Hanukkah. In Hanukkah, we were saved from the Avanim, and we weren't destroyed there. And we're not told that we have this, exhortation to be happy per se on the month of Kislev. So there has to be something more to it. So I would like to posit that the reason why in Adar specifically we are told that it's a month of joy is because in Adar there are planted the seeds to redemption. Because, well, the first thing we can look at is, there's two things I want to specifically look at. One is in Adar, in Zion Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu was born. And as we know, Moshe Rabbeinu is the redeemer of our people. And also, when we were in Mitzrayim, before we came out, everything, all the otot and muftim, everything that God did to prepare us to leave, to have that redemption, was done in the month of Adar. So this was the seeds before leading us to redemption. And there's nothing really that's would bring more joy than when you see the redemption start to sprout, when you see something that you thought was going to be utterly destroyed and that was gone, and then all of a sudden you see it growing. This is something that brings great joy. And the fact that these things happen in the month of Adar is really something that's a great motivator in terms of how we would feel. And the amazing thing is that in Adar also we are told. I mean, first of all, the parsha of the week that's coming up is Truma, and in this parsha we're not Truma. I'm sorry. Truma. So sorry. So in this we're learning about the Mishkan, and that the first week before when the Mishkan, the inauguration of the Mishkan, was a week before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and Moshe Rabbeinu, what he would do is he actually was doing before the set up the Kohanim and Levim. He would set it up, and he would do the avoda, and he would pack it up at night, and not until the 8th day, which was Shabbat, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, was the Mishkan officially set up and used in the way that we know it. So this was also the setting up of the Mishkan, which was to house the Shekhinah and the beginning of that. So, and that's a little bit more deep, because if you analyze the name for this month, it's Adar. So there's two ways that we can define Adar. So one is, the first one that we can say, it's Adir, which means great or mighty. We say that God, Adir Hu, right? Adir Hu is God is great, God is mighty, and that is displayed in these acts, like I said, that occurred in his bringing us out of Egypt, and all the great miracles and everything that he did. He displayed his great might and how great he was, and that's something also that's cause for joy. And then also Adar stands for Aleph Dar. So the breakdown is Aleph, meaning God. God is the one, what they say, the Alufo Shel Olam, the first that existed, the one, the omniscient, the omnipresent, the omnipotent, the one who exists, that we make him a dar, a dwelling place on this earth. So that's what we do when we make the Mishkan, which was done, as we said, in Adar. Was the first time when we started to build the Mishkan, and we made a dwelling place for God in Adar, which is also something that's great, something that's full of joy. But still, I think the question, there's a question that stands, because the difficulty that is posed is really that we are told in the Gemara, and we're told in certain places, that there's a strong mazal to Adar, and that it's powerful. And the fact is, even with these answers that I've given, the fact is that God had set this time aside for it to be the time of redemption. This is the time where he made Moshe to be born. This is the time where he set into motion for these steps in order to take out Israel. So it's still a time that God set, and we're still told in the Gemara that Adar is a mazal, a strong mazal, and it says all different things about mazal. And as we know, we are told that we are forbidden to what's called is akum, is to do avodat kochavim umazalot. We're not supposed to look to things like astrology and to the different signs, and to lead our lives. That's considered avodah zara. And yet it's odd, because we'll see things in the Gemara or in the Shulchan Aruch or whatever that says that this is the mazel of the month, and there are a lot of different examples of this. So the question is, what's the situation? We're told we're not allowed to do it, but yet we're told that there is these mazalas, so it's something doesn't jive. So the breakdown is, I think, in definition and in what you do with it. Because when we're told the mazal, we think of, first of all, we think of the word as luck, and we think of astrology and different things, and really what mazal means, we wish each other mazal tov all the time, and that's not considered as if we're doing something bad. You'll see great rabbis saying mazel tov. So the word mazal is really not this luck or fortune or astrological forces of sorts. It's mazal is the definition is nozel, it's a flow, and that there are flows of energy that do exist, and that there might be something to it for those who want to believe, that you're born under Aries or Taurus, Scorpio, whatever, and that that has a certain influence on your personality. Maybe so, maybe not. But even if you want to say, you can look at it as even your genetic forces, or like you think that certain things have this control over your life, and you would live your life accordingly to those things. And that's wherein lies the problem, because us as Jewish people, we're told that in Mazal Yisrael, that the Jewish people, that we don't exist under these forces of the Mazalot, meaning that maybe these things do exist, but you're not supposed to look to them and decide how you live your life based on that. That's considered avodah zarah, and that what really the only thing that you have is you're given maybe certain forces, a certain potential, or certain situations, but you are meant to do what you're meant to do with those things, and not let those things define you, but you define them. So it's looking at from which perspective. And if the danger, you can say, okay, well, if that's the case, you can still look at it and decide. But there's an inherent danger in looking at it for those who do believe in astrology. I mean, Rambam doesn't believe in any of it. He says it's not a science. But there are Chachamim who say there is something to it. But even if you have, and there were experts, in the day, like let's go back all the way to, we can start with, since it's Purim, we start with Haman, who, when he wanted to destroy our nation, he engaged in these things, and he looked at the months and found that, that it came out, the Goral to the month of Adar was a good month to destroy us, and he thought that he could succeed because he saw that in Adar Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. But what he didn't see, we know, is that Moshe Rabbeinu was also born on that day, and this tripped him up, and it also tripped up Paro. If he looked at in the astrology, and he thought, he can destroy us by means of he's going to throw the baby boys in the river and get rid of our Savior, right? And that messed him up in two ways. First of all, when Moshe was put in the basket in the water, he saw that the Savior was in the water. He thought it was done with, and he didn't have to worry about us. We're done with. And also, he saw that the demise of the leader would be in water, which we know that the problem, what caused Moshe's downfall, not going into Israel, is that he hit the rock. This whole episode with the water, but there was a misinterpretation of events and not understanding. And you can think that you understand, or you can try and stay away, or in the end, you end up causing self-fulfilling prophecies. There's things you have to do and lead your life in a certain way. And when you look at certain things, you might think you understand them, and you won't understand them, and it'll trip you up. And it's just best not to get involved with any of that at all, because even the experts have issues. And so what we're supposed to do is just lead our life according to the Torah and the ways that we know that are good and right and true, and make decisions based on those. And the fact is that in addition to that, even if there are these forces, and that we believe that they exist within the world, that God set us straight right from the beginning with Abraham Avinu, when God told Abraham that he's going to, produce this great nation, is going to come from him and everything. And Abraham said he didn't believe it, because he said he looked at the stars, and in the stars it said that he was not capable of producing children. And God took him out to the stars, and he told him, and he explained to him that might be what you're seeing, but that if you follow in my ways and you do live your life in a righteous way, you can be above that. You don't have to fall within that frame. There's ways above it, in being Judaism and following God in prayer and in perfecting your being, and all these things help us to rise above what our luck or what our mazel, what the flow is. Or it's how you use the potential flow of energy. If nothing is inherently wrong. So if you say that, I'm this and therefore I'm prone to anger, and that's just my way and I can't control it, not true. And, different things can be used for good, can be used for bad. It's all about how you channel it. So are there mazalot? You can decide for yourself what you believe. If you don't believe in it, not a problem at all. If we do believe in astrology, either way, you're not supposed to. It's considered avodah zarah to follow and to look to and to act accordingly. And it's just to your own detriment, because you're only hindering your potential when you're following something else instead of growing and becoming who you can and overcoming. Because a lot of times it is about overcoming certain things in your life. So that's that. But I wanted to talk about, now that we are in this year, we're in a Shana Me'uberet, where that we know that it's a leap year every. This is the thing. So the solar calendar, as we know, is 365 days, and the lunar calendar only has 354 days. And the Christians go by the solar, and the Muslims by the lunar, and us as Jewish people, we have a mitzvah that God gave us to start counting in Nisan, and that we have this commandment that we have to celebrate the holidays in their season. So in order to do this, and to make the calendars, to adjust the calendars, we have to, every 3 years, we have enough, because 11 days, so it takes about 3 years to have the amount of a month, and then we add in the leap year. And so, but the question is what is this significance of this leap year to us in our lives, and what does it bring? Because every month has its potential, and has its work, and has its significance, and what it means in our life. And there's the fact that we have to synchronize the lunar and the solar calendar is meaningful to us in a deeper way. And in the way that it's meaningful is that there's a solar calendar that runs around the moon, and the lunar, as we know, is the sun and the moon. So what we're told is that each person is a olam katan, each person is a small world, and each world is like a big man. Okay, so there's parallels in man and in the world, and the fact that there's a sun and a moon in the world represents something in our lives, and what it represents is the sun is representative of its light, its knowledge, it's everything, the scientific truths that are out there, the things that are constant and non-changing in the world. That's what's represented by the sun. And the moon represents our emotions. It waxes and wanes. It's not consistent. It's consistent. There's certain times where it's whole and complete, like our emotions, and certain times where it's depleting, till sometimes where you don't see anything at all. And this is something that we go through as people in our lives. And the fact that we are told to synchronize them both is tells us that Judaism values very much both. It's not that one is important and the other isn't. Even you think I get the impression that everything's about knowledge and science, and this looks like it's so important in our lives, and we trust those things because they're factual, and they're not truths that are difficult to analyze and understand. They're just there, and they're truths. And the emotions we look at sometimes as something that's inferior. That's in an argument, you always see someone saying you're being emotional, and so right away that invalidates whatever it is that you're saying. But Judaism values emotions very much, and it acknowledges emotions, and not just that, it commands us with emotions. We're told that we should love God, and that we should fear God, and that even things that you think, let's say jealousy, that you would say has no value, but we're told that cannot so freem is okay. If you're going to feel jealous over somebody else's knowledge, and it's going to make you learn more and grow more and study more, and maybe put out works that will influence people and make a difference in the world, and that's considered something good, because it's driving you to grow in life and to produce and to make the world a better place. And so that's okay. So it's no emotion is inherently good or bad, but how we utilize it, and do we do it to better ourselves and to bring more God into the world, and to make the world a better place, and that's what it's about. And so what God wants us to do is he wants us to take both of them and to synchronize them, meaning to introspect and to understand who you are in life, what you know versus your emotion, and what's guiding you, and why are you doing what you're doing. And when you do all this is the prep work for redemption of the self. This is why it comes in Adar right before Nisan, because we know Nisan is all about redemption. But it's that work beforehand. It's that making everything jive together, and synchronizing both worlds, and using it to make a harmonious one whole self. That leads to the personal redemption. That is the work that comes in Adar before we can possibly be redeemed, before we can, as the saying goes, house God. Because in Adar we're told we're supposed to we make a Mishkan, right? But you say, so now we don't have a Mishkan, we don't have a Beit HaMikdash. But as they say, there's Bilvavi Mishkan Evna, is that we're supposed to build a dwelling place for God within ourselves. And you cannot do that if you don't self-actualize, if you don't know who you are, if you're not in touch with the God within you, because God has given us all a piece of God, and to understand who you are, what drives you, what you do, and that knowledge of self that is what you have to do, prep work, in order to build a space to house God within yourself. So that's why that comes in Adar. That's why that extra month, because the extra month really could be, it could be in any month. It doesn't matter if you want the years to equal out. Why would it have to be here? I mean, and this is a good explanation of why, because it's an extra month to do the work. I actually heard somebody say something, I don't remember who it was. It's a cute little thing, but I think there's a point to be made, is that the normal month is like 30 days, and you have an extra month in Shana Muberet, which gives you 60 days, and that there's this concept in Judaism of batal b'shishim, like if something's not kosher, that if a little bit goes in, it's batal b'shishim. That's also in Adar. If you have these 2 months of and all that work, and then and a little bit something gets not in there, but you're strong enough after all that work that it can be. Is that it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny.
The Rebbe said, because you have the double days, you have the double 2 months, 30 and 30, that's 60. So it's mavaklim et kola, whatever, all of that.
This is the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
It says there, Rebbe.
Oh yeah, Rabbi Lubavitcher. Excellent. So thank you very much. So now we know who said it. The Lubavitcher Rebbe said it.
I think I thought that I want to add my sense.
No,
of
for
what
sure.
I've heard before is that the Mishkan, when we went into Galut, the Galut that we're in still now, whatever, that reason the Rabbanim sat and wrote the Mishnah is because we didn't have the Mishkan. And that if a Jew does according to the Mishnah, they didn't know that they were going to extrapolate and get to the Gemara also, that was the means to maintain our kesher with the Kadosh Baruch Hu.
The Mishnah?
The Mishnah. Because it was the writing of the oral law. And they knew that they didn't have the Mishkan when they went into Galut. So that if we encourage our practice in what is given to us, it's something that's earthly. In other words, it's not something that's only spiritual. I don't mean it to say in a negative about the spiritual essence, is that we have to grasp something onto the ground.
Yes.
And that was the Mishkan.
Yeah.
Which was part of the Adamah, which man was made part of the creation from the unity with God, and that it was encumbered, it was in-housed within the framework of the Mishnah, the written law. So, it's not negating what you're saying.
Right, no, I mean, there's a whole...
that simcha, not simcha, we're supposed to find that oneness within the framework of Jewish law.
Right.
The
Right.
problem is we don't.
Right. No, there's a whole flow. But it's
Not
very, very
as sometimes it's difficult. It's very difficult.
It's very difficult. I mean, my personal belief, there's a whole machlokas, and with all the parshiot that go on, it's very. I might talk. I'm giving the Shabbat shir, so I might talk about it on Shabbat. But there's a machlokas in whether even there was supposed to be a Mishkan Beit Hamikdash, or if that was like more Plan B, because we denied having that the revelation from God, and if we wouldn't have refused to have that one-on-one revelation from God, then we would have been able to internalize everything, and ki'ilu that Bilvavi Mishkan Evna would have been built inherently within each person having had that revelation. But because we didn't, then after that, you see, is when all the laws and mishpatim and the Mishkan and all that came into play after. If you look at the thing, so what you're saying, I mean, it jives with that. I mean, if we're living holy and we're living correctly, and it's really not something that's not. It's really a tool, because I mean, the whole thing is a little ludicrous in and of itself to make a place to house. I mean, God is everywhere, so it's because we're not capable of understanding and leading our lives in a way where we acknowledge that and live accordingly. So we do like lefachot, we do that. I mean, I think that's the way I see it. But really, the ideal would be is if we understood and knew and sensed God's presence within us and all around us all the time, and then we wouldn't have to do all those set up rituals in this and that way in order to constantly remind us and push us in the right direction. But but we're not there yet.
Do you think if we were all, use the word from Zen or whatever, enlightened and had such a strong connection with the God, that we would naturally, intuitively know what's morally correct?
Yes, I think so.
Yes.
I think that's the place where we're trying to get back to. But that takes I mean, that's obviously as complicated as it sounds. This world that we're told that we know that this world is olam is nelam. God is hidden and by design, and so uncovering and unmasking is perfect for Adar, to unmask and to uncover, to reveal the presence of God in this world, which is part of our avoda, is very, very difficult and very complex, and that's why I think the last person to do it was Abraham Avinu. I mean, it's not something that that can be easily done. It takes everything. I think it takes everything, a total devotion to that purpose to be able to do that. And it's a talich. It's so without guidance, it's really, I think, nearly impossible for us, especially in today's world where there's so much noise and there's not that, because I think it takes that quiet, as they say. It's in the what's the saying? What's the saying? In the still small voice. What's in Hebrew? It's escaping. Yeah, kol damama daka. Exactly. So I mean, I think you have to be able to be there within that kol damama, and you have to be able to experience that to get there, and they say, I mean, this is like a little esoteric and a little off, but in order to really experience, you really have to be able to live in the moment, to connect and to attach. And I don't think that's, especially nowadays, we move farther away from that as opposed to closer. But that's something that you have to be able to do in order to connect. And I think you have to have that moment of that moment of enlightenment to know that it exists, and then to want to keep it going. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So And then I forgot where I left off. We're talking about the Shana Mubarak. And it's really if you think about it, how it makes even more sense is Mubarak is a pregnancy, and the pregnancy is really about housing another life. It's like what is it when creation of a new life? There's body and there's a breath of God coming through. So that's the body and the soul coming together, and it's the body housing God, and that is represented in this extra month, and this is something that we do on a psychological level. If we're doing that avoda, and we're making it's a rebirth, because it's an understanding of yourself, and it's a acknowledgement of that God within you, and it's kind of like a rebirth at that moment. So it's kind of like making yourself ripe for that moment of redemption, so that we can go into Nisan. And Nisan is as we know, is the first commandment that God gave us, which makes really a lot of sense, because before that time there wasn't the Hebrew months. The time, first of all, the time was not ours. We were slaves, and so it wasn't. And then we know, of course, in Mitzrayim everything was oriented around the sun. Also, and then when God told us to start counting the months and to start counting from Nisan, and that the calendar was in our charge, like this is when there was like really the marriage between God and Israel, because before that the world ran as God had created it and left it, and at that point God is saying, no, now I want you people to be accountable for time. I want you to call the months. I want you to decide when the month begins, and making us a partner with him in time. And this gives us control of our own lives. This is what makes a free person, one who has control over their own lives. And when God gave us this mitzvah of counting the months, he put us in the driver's seat and made us a partner with him and said, okay, now you're free. Now you can call time. You can call your own lives. And it's at that point where we understand who we are, in terms of how with our emotion and our knowledge and our willingness to devote that to God, that gave us this purpose, which is really, I think, the purpose of the whole creation is to bring God's presence down into the earth, which again, we come back to Adar, because we're supposed to make a dwelling place for God. And you can't do that without the preceding steps to Nisan, which is why it's very crucial. Like we should not just wake up in Nisan and just expect to be, magically go into that redemption without this process, in order for it to really be meaningful and to be what it's supposed to be. So it's getting late, but I just want to mention some interesting little things. Let me just see something. Right. Okay. Okay. So a few things with regard that we're told with each month. This is a little, comes a little Kabbalistic ideas, but each month has its sense, and it has its tribe, and it has part of the body. And I just want to go over those a little quickly to get like these little lessons out of it that apply, that I think are nice. So the Adar is represented by the fish. That's the sign is the Pisces, and that's because the fish are hidden in the water, much like God's presence in this earth, and also, as we know, the fish is surrounded by water, and that's how they live, and water represents Torah, and us, that's what gives us life. So that's another one. And the tribe that they say is Naphtali, which I really like, because Naphtali's, if you look at the bracha that Yaakov gave to Naphtali, it's very short. It's only 6 words, but it's expresses how he delivers words of beauty. And I think that form of expression again comes from only what we can do. What makes his words of beauty is because they're words of truth, and because they're words of they're deep, meaningful, and true. Meaning that once we've again synchronized the emotional and the scientific and the lightness and the dark, then we can have an understanding, and we can express ourselves in a meaningful way, because we understand who we are and where we're headed. And that makes the words beautiful and meaningful, because they have wisdom, and they have purpose, and they have direction. So that's with Naphtali being the tribe. And we know that laughter is the sense for Adar, and laughter not in the silly, haha, ridiculous way that we see, but there's also that laughter of having that contradiction of also being able to laugh at yourself. And when you have that acknowledgement, sometimes of the absurd, it causes you to laugh. And when we really analyze ourselves, I think also in willingness to give ourselves over to God is sometimes when you understand that, as Cynthia, we talk about all the time, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And it's kind of how you think that you might be X, and after you analyze, you see that even though you know this, you act in this way, and then you start to see that you really don't really have that good a hold on who you thought you were, and it's absurd kind of, and it makes you laugh, and it also helps you to give yourself over to God, who's wiser and who can set a way for your life to help you in that redemptive process. So that's laughter, and the letter is kuf, which is like a kof, like a monkey, because also we try to imitate God in this world, and to emulate his actions is what we try and do.
Why is it kuf?
Why? I don't know why.
I mean, where does it say that it's
Right, so
Adar is kuf?
right. Well, all of these are I think the Zohar, and all these are I don't know where they get that idea from. I guess it's Masorah.
So each month has a different letter?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's also associated with the part of the body, as they say, is the spleen, which could be either the source of melancholy or black humor, and that has also to do with laughter, because laughter can go 2 ways. Laughter can help you, and it can ease a situation, and it could bring good things, but also too much laughter, if you're laughing at yourself too much or all the time, it could lead to depression. And that's why you see like so many cases of like Robin Williams types like that are hysterical, but when you start making fun of everything in life, then nothing's important anymore, and it can lead to depression and those sorts of things. So with laughter, you have to be very careful in how you utilize it, because there is a fine line in it being helpful or harmful. And I think that's a very important lesson for today, because I think we tend to, as a people in a generation, to laugh at everything, and it kind of takes away the importance from a lot of things in our lives, as we start to be cynical and laugh at everything, and that doesn't help anybody because it dulls everything and makes a darker world. So that's about more or less all the major points that I wanted to make. Does anybody want to add anything? See, perfect timing. You can catch your bus.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for that.